Will Goldstein here. The title of this video is The Book of the Watchers, Book 1, and it's chapters 1 through 16. So I hope you subscribe to these videos. Check out my music. I'm actually working on another digital album. So I just finished one a few months ago called Wings, and I'm doing another one. So anyway, this is chapters 1 through 16, like I said, of Book 1. So what I'm doing is I'm giving you a lot of information. I'm paraphrasing it. I'm not reading it because that would take too long. You can read it online if you want to just listen to it and someone will actually read word for word. I'd say I'm giving a summary of it, but 90% you're going to get the basic complete story by listening to this in less time. Well, I'll also add some comments to it. So this is chapters 1 through 5, and it's right off the bat, it's for the tribulation days. That's who it's addressed to. And it's an overview, and this is this first part. And one thing to think about, this is not linear. So the story, the way that Enoch is telling it, or whoever wrote it, he's jumping forward and backwards, so it's not linear. So it looked like something's already happened, and then there's more comments about going back. There's nothing I can do about that other than just explain that to you. So basically we have, it's for the tribulation days, and it's for the wicked and the godless to be removed basically from the earth. So that's the whole goal, is to free the earth of the wicked and the godless. So for the wicked, God comes to the earth, even to Mount Sinai. This is how it actually begins. It's kind of beginning at the end, or it's not sure whether he comes at the beginning or at the end, but this is the way it starts. The eternal God comes to earth, and even to Mount Sinai, and the mountains are falling down, and all shall see him, and there's fire, and all will perish in judgment. So I'm pretty particular about, if it says all will perish in judgment, that's what it says there, although later on it kind of changes the story. So I'm just telling you the way it's written. So so then there's a God's judgment, and but then for the righteous, well, right off the bat, he's saying that all aren't going to perish, because he's saying what he's inferring is all the wicked are going to perish. So because for the righteous, he's going to make peace, and he protects the elect. And interesting, I talk a lot about illumination, and here it says the light appears to them. So he comes with 10,000 holy ones. He comes to destroy the wicked for their evil deeds and their words spoken. That's why he's coming. Second coming of Christ. The heavens have not changed. He's kind of giving an overview of what the way the earth is at the time that this happens. The heavens have not changed. The seasons are continuing. The earth has become too hot, global warming, to tread on. Nature has continued following the laws that it's always had and the commands that it follows. The wicked, disobedient, and there's disobedient and pride and blasphemy in heart, they will have no peace. So those people will have no peace. Judgment is coming, and they will perish with eternal curses, and there will be no mercy. In their misery, they will curse the righteous. So as the wicked are being cursed, they're going to curse the righteous. The elect will rejoice because their sins will be forgiven, and there will be mercy. There's salvation and light, again, illumination, light, joy, and peace, and they inherit the earth, just like Jesus said. The sinners have no salvation. So there you go. How do you get saved? Sinners have no salvation. So if they're not forgiven, then say through Christ, then no salvation, but a curse is what they'll get. So the elect obtain wisdom, and they're freed forever from sin, and they're made humble. So once they receive a new body, I guess is what he's kind of inferring, they're a new creature and they're no longer able to sin. Forever freed from sin. That's what it says. So the righteous continue to live their life in peace until the number of their days is complete. It's kind of a little bit contradictory, so it doesn't suggest that they have eternal life here. It says they're just going to live their life in peace until the number of their days is complete, which means sooner or later they're going to die. So who knows? I'm just telling you the story the way it's written. So, okay. So now we have the fall of the angels. This is chapter 6. So some headings that are there: the angels intercede for mankind, the angels are doomed. So there's good angels and there are bad angels. So we have to I'll try to specify that. And then he's talking about the Messianic kingdom. So the angels, so these are the good angels, or no, these are the bad angels, I'm sorry. So looking back and forth. So the bad angels notice the beautiful women in the world. Okay? So, and the angels lusted. So these are the watchers. The angels lusted after them, and they agreed to take wives for themselves and have children. Their leader, who came up with this idea, is Samyaza. He's the leader, and he solicits the company, but he's fearing that he will be all alone, and he will bear the penalty. So in other words, he's thinking about doing this, but he's worried that the others aren't going to do it with him, and he's going to get all the penalty. And so they listen to what he says, and they join forces with him, and they swear an oath to carry out the plan. So this is the plan. They're going to take the women. The women are beautiful. So, and this is during the days of Jared. So, and it says that there were 200 that descended onto Mount Hermon. So Mount Hermon top of Mount Hermon is a 9,230 feet high, and it's in the northern border. It's near it's not the northern border. It's near the border of Syria and Lebanon and Israel, sort of in the Golan Heights. That whole area is, and that's also a possible place where the transfiguration of Jesus took place on Mount Hermon. The other one is Mount Tabor. So there's 200 of them that descend onto Mount Hermon. So it's a high mountain. And there's so they start this assembly, and they've got 19 chiefs of 10. So in other words, you have all these, but that comes out to 190 instead of 200, but that's the way it's written. So you have a chief. I guess the 10. You have the 10 plus the, yeah, it does add up. Okay, well, pretty close. So you got 19 chiefs, and they're chiefs of 10 groups. And 15 of those names of those chiefs end with L. So E-L, which I've talked about that before, and that's the interpretation here is E-L. It means God or gods, but it also means shining one. So now we're to chapter 7. So all these watchers, the bad watchers, all took wives and defiled themselves, and they taught them charms, enchantments, and they got roots. So we're talking about the beginnings of witchcraft, I guess, or healing. I mean roots, but it's not necessarily witchcraft, but roots and about plants and herbal medicine. I don't know, although those kind of medicines can be used for poison too. So, so wives become pregnant, and they bear great giants. Now it says in here that the height of these giants is 3,000 ells. Well, if you look up ells, in the Vikings, it's 18 inches, but that's a Viking ell. So who knows what their real ell is? Because if you do the math on that and use a Viking ell, it comes out to 4,500 feet tall. Now that's pretty tall. However, there's some bizarre stuff happening out there. I mean, I've actually seen, if you go on the video on YouTube, I've actually seen mountains and literally thousands of feet tall, and they look like they're the shape of a human or a face and a body. It's crazy. And so I don't know, maybe they this world is getting more and more far out. So anyway, I'm not saying that's true, but it is bizarre, very bizarre. So the giants turned against men. So once they bore these giants, and they're turning against the men, and they're killing them. And the giants, because they're giants and they eat a lot of food, right? So they're killing all the beasts and they're drinking their blood. And if we know anything about God, he says right off the bat, if you kill to eat something, you do not eat or drink the blood. So these giants are drinking the blood. So that's a major violation of God's commands. So chapter 8, now we have Azazel, and he's teaching them the art of war, and he's part of the company, one of the chiefs. The art of war, swords, knives. He's one of the worst characters of the whole lot. In fact, if you had to pick the worst, he's probably the worst. So he teaches them the art of war, swords, knives, shields, breastplates, metalwork, but he also, for the men, he teaches them how to kill each other, and fight wars. And for the women, he teaches them the arts of enchantment and seduction. So he's teaching them, giving them bracelets and adorning their eyelids and wearing costly stones to entice men, and tinctures and herbal extract. Those are herbal extracts to like perfumes to entice men. So it's the art of seduction. So he's basically destroying the men with war and destroying the women with sex. So he gets pretty bad news. So the result of this is you have rampant fornication, of course. What else would you expect? So each chief taught different skills. So they have enchantments and roots and astrology. So here's the beginnings of astrology and constellations and the clouds and about the earth and the seasons and the sun and the moon. And here it's and at this point, like I said, the giants are killing everybody. So you have all these dead people who have been killed, humans that have been killed by the giants, and they're crying out, and their cry goes up to heaven. So now you have the good angels, a change of setting in chapter 9. You have the 4 archangels. And notice all their names also end in L because they're shining ones. So they're the archangels, the good ones. Michael, Uriel, Raphael, Gabriel. Like I said, they all end in EL, which has to do with shining one. They're up in heaven and they look down and they see the bloodshed and the wicked from up in heaven. And they hear the pleas of mankind that are the dead ones that are crying out, being slaughtered by the giants. And they go to the Lord of hosts, and a bunch of other names that are associated with him, and they approach God with praise. They consider Azazel's crime, and they're considering his crimes because he revealed the eternal secrets, which he shouldn't have done, to the humans. And then concerning Samyaza, their leader, he was responsible for defilement with the women and bearing children. And now we have giants. They're going to tell God the whole story of what's happening down there. Now we have the giants and the bloodshed and all the sins are abounding, and now the dead that are been killed by the giants are crying out to heaven. But then they acknowledge, and it's interesting, it says God's gift of foreknowledge. It actually uses that word. So it says foreknowledge. In other words, they're telling him the whole story of what happens, but he already had foreknowledge of what's going to happen. So chapter 10, God sends Uriel, another archangel, to Noah. So now we're in the time of Noah. And it tells him that the earth is to be destroyed, the deluge is coming, all will be destroyed, and instruct Noah and his seed on how to escape. So we all know the story of Noah and the ark. So then it's judgment time. So Azazel is bound and he's cast into darkness. In Dudael, which is east of Jerusalem, he's in the desert, but it's in the east of Jerusalem is looking towards the Dead Sea, the lowest place on earth. So that's where he is, near the lowest place on earth, Anyway, but he is buried under the rocks because he's covered with rocks, and he's not to see light forever. But really, that forever means he's awaiting a day of judgment, and then he's going to be cast into the fire. So that's the judgment against Azazel for what he did. So and then there's a change of status, and then after this happens, in the future, the earth is going to be healed from the secret things that the Watchers disclosed, and after that judgment. But at this time, as we're continuing on, the whole earth is corrupted. So God says to Gabriel, destroy the reprobates and the fornicators by setting one against the other. So he's telling them, just make sure that they kill each other. Okay? So the fathers down on earth had hoped for eternal life, but now that's not granted, and it says something about 500 years, so they get 500 years. Don't we wish we had 500 years? So now Archangel Michael comes into the picture, and so he's told to bind Samazah and the associates with the women, because Samazah was the one that was all about the defilement with the women and marrying the children, having sex with them, and all that. So he caused them to see. So here's the judgment against them. He caused them to see the sons killing each other. Yeah, so that's the sentence of him. He is going to see his children killing each other. Bind them for 70 generations in the valleys of the earth, which is 4,900 years, awaiting the day of judgment. So I did some calculations. So there's a few characters that we need to know, because some main characters that are in this are Enoch. I know that people say that it isn't the original Enoch that wrote this. I'm just going by what the story says, because the characters in this are Enoch, and Noah is another biblical character. So we have some dates that in timelines that are associated with that. So, for example, the Bible timeline says that Enoch, he didn't die, he was transported, like the story here says. We haven't gotten there yet. And he was born around 3019 BC, and he lived, or he died, he didn't die. He was transported around 3019. So he left the earth in 3019, but he didn't die. So if you add 3019 plus 2023, which is the year as we now, we come up with 5,102. Notice that that's not far off from 4,900 years. Okay, so that's only 202 years. If we use the date of Noah, and we have a couple of dates, so one estimate of Noah is that it was 2350 BC, and if you add that to 2023, you come up with 4,373, which is less than the 4,900. So the first one with Enoch was greater than, now we're on less, so now we're in between there. And then if you use the 2,900 years, that's another estimate for Enoch, and these basically timelines that have done studies, and you add the 2023, you come up with 4,923, which is only 23 years off from basically 2023. That's pretty amazing when you start to think about what we're seeing in these UFO. I'm not proposing UFOs. I'm a believer in God. But I don't know what the reality is. But it is very bizarre that exactly when you use these dates and calculations, and you see all the stuff that we're hearing about UFOs and all this going on in the news, you start to wonder, if these are the watchers set loose, because they're only bound for 4,900 years. And if that 4,900 years is up and they're out. That's basically what the story is saying. It's not they will be judged eventually, but they are out, okay, after 4,900 years. So, and if they're out, maybe that's what they're here causing more havoc. Who knows? So, then, after they go to their final judgment, which hasn't happened yet, then they're going to the abyss for torment and prison, and they're bound together till the end of all generations. So that's their final end. But anyway, so and destroy the children of the watchers and all the wicked, and the future is to destroy all these children of the watchers and the wicked and plant righteousness and truth and joy forever. So we might think of this as the Messianic kingdom, okay, the millennium, okay. So then the righteous escape, thousands of children live in peace and fill the world with righteousness, the earth is cleansed, and people become righteous, and the nations worship God, and there's no more sin, and the punishment or torment forever. So this is after the judgment, after the return of Christ, at millennial kingdom, I think is what it's really inferring here. So then chapter 11, and this begins with a promise of the blessing of peace and truth throughout all generations of men. So, now they're trying to get some intercession for Azazel. In other words, some are saying this judgment is too strict for Azazel. So, intercession for Azazel and the fallen angels, but what ends up happening is God does not hear the pleas, and there's their announcement of their doom. Forget it, I'm not listening, is basically God's answer. And it tells why in the story. So Enoch was hidden and taken away. So here it is right here. Enoch's hidden and taken away, just like the Bible says. Hidden and taken away from men. He disappeared, but he was with the watchers. So when you're wondering where he went when he disappeared, he didn't die. He went with the watchers. He went with the good watchers. Okay, so he went, with the list of the ones I told you about: Gabriel, Uriel, Raphael, and all of them. Okay, so he disappeared. He was with the watchers, the holy ones, and Enoch was sent by God and the holy ones to the watchers who defiled themselves. So now he's being sent. He goes up to see God, but now he's being sent back down to the watchers who defiled themselves. And this is what he's saying: because you have wrought destruction to the earth, there is no forgiveness or peace. Though God's not listening. This is what you've done on the earth. He's not listening. There is no forgiveness or peace. You will see the murder of your children, and no mercy or peace will be given. If God's set his mind not to forgive, there's nothing under the sun that's going to change his mind. So, chapter 13, Enoch goes to Azazel, and he says, there's no peace for you, and there's only bonds, bondage. You're going to be, and your request is not granted because the unrighteousness you showed to men. That's why, because he was destroying mankind. So he's the one. Well, he's one of the ones that's extremely responsible for bringing corruption and evil and war and seduction into the world. And so, no, there's no mercy for you. So, so then Enoch went to the whole group, and when they see him coming, they're terrified and they're trembling, going, "Oh my God, God's not going to listen. He's not going to forgive us." So they ask Enoch to petition to the Lord for them, and shame. So they felt shame and they hid their face from him. And Enoch kind of sort of has mercy on them, and he agrees to write a petition. So he's saying, well, maybe God will change his mind. I'll try. And he sits So he goes in, after that, he goes over and he's figuring out what to do, and he sits in the land of Dan, which is southwest of Hermon, which is basically in the Golan Heights of Israel, or somewhere close to that. And he has a dream of the chastisement. So he's sitting there thinking about this whole thing, and God's answer to him is the chastisement. So he comes back and he revisits them, and they're weeping, and he knows there's no mercy for them, and so their weeping isn't going to do any good, so instead he reprimands them. He doesn't try to console them, he reprimands them. He said, and God had given Enoch the wisdom to reprimand the watchers. He gives decrees, and he's for him to go and do that. And the petition that you have is not granted. There's judgment, and the judgment is passed for all eternity. It's not temporary, it's all eternity, forever. So the watchers are exiled from heaven, and they're bound for all the days of the world, which is what basically is in the book of Jude. So they're bound. So their children are killed by the sword, and their weeping is not heard, and their prayers are not answered. This is all what's in the book of Enoch. Enoch is taken away to heaven, so back he's taken away. Like I said, it's not really linear thinking. So, and he goes into the house in the presence of tongues of fire. He's going up to heaven, and this is what heaven looks like, or this is the way he's reporting it. So he goes into heaven, he goes into this house, and there's presence of tongues of fire. Okay, and crystal walls and fiery cherubim, and there's lightning up in the stars and the ceiling, and there's fire surrounding the walls. And it's interesting, it says it's hot, and then it says it's cold. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense how cold could be, but that's what it says. So, and then he leaves that house and he goes into a second house, and it's like the first house, but it's greater, and there's fire everywhere, and he sees a crystal throne, and there's wheels wheels shining. Are we talking UFOs again? And he sees a vision of the cherubim. Now I'm wondering if these are God's pilots. I'm sure I'm kidding, but it almost sounds like that's what it is. So and under the throne came fire. Is this like Cape Canaveral with a launching pad? So there's a great glory. They call him the great glory, and he's seated on a throne. So God, and his raiment was pure white and brighter than the sun. So that's basically what God looked like. He was like I just told you. So the angels could not enter nor look at his face. Pretty much what Bible says about looking at his face. You can't look at his face and survive. He was surrounded by fire, and 10,000 stood before him. And the most holy one stayed in his presence. And Enoch goes into there, and he's going, well, this is pretty heavy stuff. So he's trembling. But Enoch was called to by God and summoned. So the holy ones, the holy ones went over and summoned him. God wants to talk to you. So that's what happened. So Enoch approaches God, and he's bowed. So now we're in chapter 15. So God now is speaking to Enoch, and God tells Enoch, don't fear. And he says, go tell them, this is what he said. This is basically what God says to them. This is what they should have done that they didn't do. You should intercede for men and not men for you. And you're to recount their offenses. The women that they defiled themselves with, they produced the giants, they begot the children, they lusted after the flesh. And he's saying that you were holy and you were spiritual. You had eternal life. And God has appointed wives for men, not for angels. And the angels dwell in heaven. Wives are for men on earth. Okay, so you went against everything that is in your nature. So now we have giants. And you produce from spirits and flesh, And now, so because you've done this, these children of yours are going to be evil spirits. These giants are going to be evil spirits. And their dwelling is going to be on earth. So now we're wondering, where are the evil spirits on earth? Well, here you go. Here's your answer. So the giants, what do? They oppress, they destroy, they do battle, they work trouble, they rise against other people and the children of men. And this is because they will rise up against the children of men and women because they proceeded from them. So what he's saying is they are from these women, the women were their mothers, and so now they're rising up against, because that's exactly what God says, because they are proceeded from them. So from the death of the giants, and this is a little bit confusing, but this is basically what it says, and the proceeding of the spirits, they shall destroy until the great judgment, the consummation of the age. So we're talking about the final judgment that's still yet coming. And report to the watchers, you only knew, this is what he said. God says to him, you only knew, to Enoch to tell them, you only knew some mysteries, the lesser worthless ones. In other words, God's saying, you didn't know the real mysteries, you watchers, that you think he revealed to mankind. The real mysteries, I never trusted you with. You only knew the worthless ones. And that's exactly what it says. Yet you revealed them. So in other words, they were entrusted with a little bit, and no wonder he didn't entrust them with more, because they're not trustworthy. So yet you revealed them, and now because of these, men and women work evil, and because of this, you will have no peace. In other words, they're responsible for the evil, this evil that's flooding throughout the world. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll continue on with the next part of the book 1 in the Watchers. Please subscribe if you like the videos. Check out my music. Will Goldstein here, thekingscourt.com.